2019 meeting of the Finance Committee, 7 o'clock. We're starting on time. Our agenda tonight, we're going to review, vote on a few transfers. A lot of those were kind of alluded to last week. We have the Fire Chief and Lieutenant Harrigan in for the Police Department to take care of those. Budgets tonight we'll be reviewing, and this is including CIP, would be for the Senior Center, Elder Affairs, the Info Technology Department, Department of Public Works. We're also going to have a discussion and potential vote on the revised overall financial management policies, capital budgets. This is a continuation of what we started last week. There aren't any minutes tonight. And just a heads up, well, I'm going to wait on that in terms of our budgets for the next few weeks. So let's get right to the transfers first. And I've got the police transfer first. I don't know if everyone else has that. Lieutenant Harrigan's here. If you want to come on up. Nice to see you again. I know you gave us a heads up that this was going to happen. I think we were surprised it was a week later, but good for you on this. My understanding is most of these transfers are to carry you out through the end of the fiscal year as best as possible.
Correct.
That's the intent on these.
The only caveat with the assessment center request, we really just ballpark that. That's mostly driven by the number of candidates that participate in the exercises. So until we put out a request for proposal and get responses back, that's our best guess as to what we're looking at for the cost of that.
Okay. So we're going to take these individually. The first transfer, this is to miscellaneous services regarding the assessment center, and this is coming from the patrolman account. Amount requested is $6,500. Can you give us a brief on what that is intending to cover, please?
Sure. I just want to say this is not a new position. This is simply to establish an eligibility list should a vacancy occur for for sergeant. So basically what this money is used for is to compensate a vendor for developing and administering an assessment center to establish a list of candidates for promotion. So should a vacancy occur from the time that the list is certified through civil service, we'd have up to 2 years to make a promotion off that established list.
Okay. While we have this open, can you comment on all four of these transfers? And we're looking at something approaching $50,000. They're all coming from the patrolman account?
Correct.
Can you explain your expected availability there?
Sure. Well, we had a couple of retirements that one was anticipated, one was not earlier this fiscal year. Those positions were funded at top step with one bachelor degree. So there's been a savings in the salary account as a result of those two retirements. Additionally, we have 2 patrol vacancies. One was the new position that we got July 1 of this year. Another was from a position that we got in 2018 that we weren't able to fill. So we have vacancies within the department that have resulted in savings in the salary line item. So that's why we're looking at the patrolman salary account to make these transfers.
Has there been any particular pressure on overtime?
There's always pressure on overtime. We have IOD and these other vacancies. Like I said, one wasn't anticipated. The IOD, we have no control over that. We have a person who's been out the entire fiscal year as a result of injury, and he's recently had a couple of setbacks in his recovery, so that could be the rest of the fiscal year before we see him back to duty. So elections coming up, the Memorial Day Parade, all these things, in addition to guys taking their vacation and earned time. There's always pressure on overtime, it seems.
All right, I'll open up to questions. Kim?
Eddie, what's the current balance in overtime?
Thank you.
$50,700.
And how much has been expended?
$199,321.
When do you anticipate filling the patrol position?
Well, we were hoping to get a mix of maybe lateral candidates now, since the positions have been open and there are no academies right now, to put bodies in. So our best information is that Boylston will be opening their academy again. It's been funded sometime after July 1st, so it would be our hope to get a list from Civil Service. I believe the entry-level patrol officer's exam is a week from Saturday, so depending on how long it takes Civil Service to certify that list, we'd probably be moving off of that and looking to get some of these vacancies filled.
Kevin?
Just a couple questions. So the assessment center, have we done assessment centers previously? Do you have an anticipated opening coming up? Is that why we're doing it? And does Civil Service dictate the timing? I know they do the written exam, but as far as the assessment center, how does that work as far as establishing a list?
So we have to requisition for an exam through Civil Service. And once we do that, Civil Service sends back to us a delegation agreement for an assessment center, which basically outlines the duties of the vendor, the HRD of Civil Service in this instance, in the town. So from that delegation agreement, the requests for proposals go out to those companies that do assessment centers. From that, whoever's selected as a vendor sits down usually with the town, the appointing authority, maybe town management, establishes the criteria for which the exercises will be comprised of. That has to be approved once they come to an agreement on what's going to be tested and the competencies involved in each of the exercises. That has to be approved by HRD. Once that happens, then they have to pick up, the vendor and the town have to come to an agreement on the date the assessment center will run. There are announcement postings, everything you have to do through Civil Service in order to make all this happen. So it is somewhat time sensitive and you have to act. I think it's in the request for proposal that once a vendor's selected, they have to commence with the actual assessment center within, I believe, it's 30 days. So then, once the assessment center's run, the candidates are scored, the vendor sends that information back to Civil Service. Civil Service then looks at the training and experience component, factors that in, waits the 7-day review period, and then establishes a list. So we're hoping to get this expedited, so if the approval is made tonight for this transfer, we'd be hoping to run something in May, so at least we'd be able to pay out of this fiscal year, and then however long Civil Service takes to establish that. I would think it would be sometime July, the latest.
We have used assessment centers
We've
previously?
used assessment centers for police chief, police lieutenant, never for police sergeant. This would be the first. And I'll just put out there also that unlike other instances where we've run assessment centers, guys that participate in the assessment center are going to pay the $250 that they typically pay to participate in a written exam. So there is a cost to the individual to participate in this as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, this is a request for $6,500 to miscellaneous services. Do I have a motion?
Motion, second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, so voted. Thank you. The second transfer of $5,000 to building and grounds, also from the patrolman account, to pay for unanticipated repairs to the buildings and/or any of its systems. Once again, this is to an expectation to get you through June 30th, correct?
Right, that's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. They were just in doing our preventative maintenance, and I've already identified 2 issues that need repair. And there's been no cost associated with that at this point, so.
Good, thank you. Questions, the motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Elaine.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Thank you. Our third transfer is $2,500 to the food account, also from the patrolman account, to pay for anticipated detainee meals, also to pay for training meal allowance for in-service/specialized training. I know you had mentioned this last week. So I don't know that we shouldn't have been warned. Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, so voted. Thank you. And our last transfer is actually to the overtime account. I apologize, I had forgotten part of it was going there. Actually, $37,500 at this time from the patrolman account to overtime. This cover any overtime related to shift coverage, emergency callbacks, special event, or after-hours response. This is a first guess at what gets you through June 30th?
Correct. Based on, we looked at back the last 2 fiscal years, and we're hopeful that this will meet those needs for June 30th.
Okay.
Motion? Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, so voted. Thank you. Thanks, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Take a week off from us, will you? Thank you. All right, our one other transfer, Chief Coleman's here. Good to see you again, Chief. This is a fire department transfer, amount requested $2,500. This is to the building maintenance account from fire suppression to cover an anticipated shortfall in the building maintenance line item until June 30th, 2019. My only question is, $2,500, do you think that's going to do it?
Well, we currently have 500 in the count, so this will get us to around 3,000. I'm kind of taking a slower approach. I didn't want to overshoot the account. If I have to come back again in May or June, I would rather do that than transfer too much out of the salary line.
That's fine. Any questions on this?
Motion? Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, so voted. Thanks, Chief.
Chairman, if I can, I would just like to let the committee, advise the committee on an issue that I have that may be before you towards the end of the fiscal year. Back on February 8th, we had a motor vehicle accident on the Mass Turnpike. We had a tractor-trailer rollover. The driver was trapped in the vehicle with serious injuries. During that incident, during the extrication process, 3 of our members were required to lay on the ground in order to treat the patient and try to cut the patient out of the vehicle. And we had 3 sets of turnout gear that were damaged due to diesel fuel. They were laying in the diesel fuel while they were trying to make the extrication. Over the last 30 days, I've been working with the insurance company. I spoke with them again today. I have no reason to believe at this time that they're not going to make some sort of payment towards the loss of the gear, but they are going to, based on the age of the equipment, the current condition, which I had to send them a full report and photos and all that stuff, they are going to, yeah, thank you, that's the word I was looking for. They are going to depreciate the gear slightly. So I don't anticipate, although it's been a bit of a road over the last 30 days, I don't anticipate a flat out, you're going to get nothing. Currently in the protective equipment line item, I have $17,800 that I've had set aside to purchase 6 sets of turnout gear as the second set, which would finish the department in that project. So I'm here tonight just advising you that I'm sort of in this situation. I really don't know what the outcome is at this moment. I'm trying not to touch that $17,000 in personal protective equipment because I want to finish that second set of gear project. I'm anticipating that I'll have some money in one of the 2 salary accounts or an overtime account to cover whatever balance that they depreciate, but the number is unknown at this point. But I just wanted to advise you tonight, just so when I came in later, it wasn't.
No, appreciate the heads up, and I certainly don't want to delay in making sure that there's enough turnout gear. And
yeah, and I'm not hitting the panic button because the members have a second set, so they do have something right now. So to wait another couple of months to kind of figure out what we're going to do, I have stuff to put them in, but 2 of the sets were fairly new. They were only a couple of years old, so I've been negotiating with the insurance company on what that's going to be, and I anticipate that's probably going to be another week or 2 dance with them.
Okay. All right, questions? Kevin first and then Kim?
I know, Chief, we've discussed this on the side, but that it's not worthwhile for the fire to build Mass DOT for every response up there for minor incidents. But I know reports are generated anytime Auburn Fire or EMS goes up to the Turnpike in anticipation of being billed, Mass DOT being billed back for your response and equipment utilized. This is an instance, and especially larger scale instance, where you're utilizing booms and products and all kinds of things, that you are generating bills to Mass DOT and seeking reimbursements.
Yeah, it depends on the incident, and things have changed over the years with the hazmat component. We used to bill for the hazardous materials that we use, any speedy dry, booms, pads, things like that. The way that Mass DOT deals with it now through their towing contract is typically all of that stuff is replaced to us before we even leave the scene from the towing company, and then the towing company is responsible for billing that. So we very rarely bill out a hazmat component, but this is one of those incidents because of the scale, because of the amount of equipment that was up there and the resources needed for this particular extrication. This will be one of those calls that will be invoiced to Mass DOT.
And I mean, I would suggest adding the turnout gear in there as well, and if the insurance pays for a percentage of it, then let Mass DOT pick up new sets of turnout gear.
Yeah, it's that, I haven't had that conversation. It'll be an interesting one, but it's worth a shot. I'm not really getting, I'm not getting the feeling at this time that the insurance company is going to completely back away, but we're just kind of negotiating what that depreciation number is going to be.
Okay. Kim?
Chief, how much is a set of gear?
$2,500 a set. That's the coat and the pants.
So you, worst case scenario, you're talking about $7,500?
$7,500, yep.
Thank you.
Oh, good to know. Thanks, Kim. Chief, thank you. Thanks, and keep us updated through Eddie is fine.
Yep, absolutely.
That'll be fine, and if we need to make a transfer to cover that, once again, I do not want those guys going without. There's no excuse for it.
Yep, much appreciated.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, moving on, we're going to the budgets, including CIP. Senior Center is first on our list tonight. Who's here from the Senior Center? Come on up. And how are you tonight?
How are you?
Good, doing good. What do we have for a CIP component here? We have anything? We got, I looked at it. Just out in 2023.
So nothing, Mr. Chairman, nothing scheduled for FY 2024,
Correct.
and there's no items scheduled for 20, 21, 22. There is one item for FY 23.
And I missed it. What is that item, by the way? I just missed it.
Dining furnishings and equipment, primarily chairs.
Kind of a
Replacement
placeholder kind of thing at this point. Good. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, that's fine. Let's go right to the budget, which I had a dickens of a time finding. All right. So the Senior Center budget. Town manager's recommendation is almost $600 below department request, but an increase of almost 2.8%. Amount requested in total is $177,010, and that's about $4,800 over prior year. What's new up there that you can fill us in on?
Okay, so basically the increase was for director salary, and then the assistant director salary, I had put in for a 2% increase, but Ed and Julie have it a little bit lower because we didn't know about union contracts.
Yep.
So once that's finalized, then that number would probably change.
Okay.
Van drivers, we did increase it. It was $36,000. We put in $38,500 because of the need of transportation, which has increased. And then there is vacation coverage, which stayed the same, $375, which would bring those salaries to $153,160. As far as expenses, maintenance expense just stay the same at $3,600. Nutrition program, which is $1,000, which we give to Elder Services of Worcester for the lunch program that we provide, which is daily.
Is that a contracted? Is that $1,000 contracted? I mean, that's too
No,
round.
they-
That's
yeah.
too round a number.
Yeah, what they do is they'll send us kind of like a suggested donation, and it's up to each town to donate what
Okay.
they feel is appropriate in their budget. So we do $1,000. $500 for program expense. Miscellaneous supplies, $3,150. Maintenance and building, $5,500. And then the gas, we kept it $9,000, I'm not exactly sure. Travel, $250, and conference and dues is $850. $23,850 for expenses.
Okay. How's that gas line? Are we okay on that for this year?
Well, there are three sources of funds that we utilize for gas. A portion comes out of the formula grant, a portion comes through a donation through St. Vincent's, and we have another sum of money here. So, I think we've utilized the other funding sources already, didn't we, Jean? So, we are running now, year-to-date, out of a $9,000 budget, we spent $7,022. We have roughly $2,000 left.
So we'll be close.
So I think we'll be okay. I don't know if we use the St. Vincent's, but I think we use the majority of the formula grant. Gene and I will take a look at that. What I will say is we made an adjustment when Gene's first budget was submitted last year on a number of line items. So we brought it up to more of the three-year average. There were some additional programs and activities that Gene was undertaking that we made a commitment to. So that's why it's level funded, because we made a substantial adjustment the year before.
Right, okay.
Right, I had done back when I had first started my position, a three-year analysis. And then what happened is we were having some trouble with our heating system and with our air conditioner. So there was money that was spent previous 2 years to try and get that fixed. So it was from East Temperature and Stearns and a lot of electrical issues. And then we did have some problems with our front doors, our sliding doors from Hasek. So that was, we needed a new motor. So it was just unexpected type.
Stuff you gotta do.
Yeah, things that.
So there seemed to be a number of miscellaneous building repairs on an annual basis, so we increased the budget by 2 years from the previous year to the current year that we're in.
Okay.
So, looking at those line items, there seems to be adequate funds in order to get her through.
Sure.
But it's something that Gene and I monitor on a monthly or quarterly basis, and if there are some issues relative to the level of funding, we have those discussions and discuss ways of meeting those obligations.
Okay, great. Thank you both. Open up to any questions? No questions? Okay, we have a requested budget of $177,010, representing a 2.79 increase.
A motion to recommend?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, so voted. Great, thank you very much. Nice to see you.
Thank you. And I left you all a newsletter, too.
Yes, I saw. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next, Mike's here. Mike, come on up. We see Mike once a year. Come on, We couldn't be doing this without Mike. Get your info, guy.
Hello.
Let's go to the CIP first. I know there's always some exciting techie stuff in there. Off the top of my head, you did a kind of a pocket shift
Yeah.
in the current year?
Yep.
Can you just explain that briefly? Sure. What you're trying to do there?
Originally, I had two items. The total was going to be $55,000, and I changed that to one item of $50,000. And this is going to get me on a 5-year plan with some of our equipment and shore up some deficiencies that we have elsewhere. One of the items we have is the security cameras. We identified that we need a new server for those, and we want to have a backup server as well in case the cameras go down, the server goes down. That way the cameras, video are backed up elsewhere. We want to have a new backup server, so we have two. Again, if one goes down, we'll have a secondary. I've identified 7 locations that don't have battery backup units for their network switches, different buildings, so I want to get those on that, so if they lose power briefly or whatever, the network stays up and the switches stay up, and they don't, it helps with power spikes as well, helps secure the equipment. One thing I want to get on a 5-year cycle is battery backup replacements. So instead of replacing the units, you just replace the batteries. That'll keep them going. I want to do that for our existing units for a 5-year cycle. I have a firewall analyzer device, which will just provide us better log information on our firewall. That would be a one-time thing. It would, and in the future, when we replace a firewall, that would be included with that. I have a couple new switches that would be replacing older switches that are no longer supported. And another item would be our storage unit. We currently have one. If that goes down, we lose information, we lose our data. So I want to have a backup and redundant storage device. And that would be on a recurring plan as needed as well.
Okay,
So that's what the 50,000 would include.
all right. Jumping out to the, I'll say the 2024, how many laptops, I assume the number was in somewhere in the backup I missed. Is 15,000 going to
Oh, yes.
maybe get us?
We just replaced 12 this past year, and I increased it a little price increase because, especially this year, buying equipment with trade agreements, prices all went up a significant amount, so I increased that a bit from the one I did for this current year. I'm guessing around 12. I'll get as many as I can from it, but 12 is what we have now.
Okay. That's fine. Any other questions on the CIP? Kev?
Just briefly, Mike, can you just go over what the benefits of us having our own servers? I'm not a technology guy, but as opposed to, it seems a lot of people are storing stuff off-site via clouds. This stuff seems like it goes out of date so quickly. By the time we buy it and install it, there's already
Sure.
issues. Can you explain what the advantages, disadvantages, costs?
As far as servers go, we have 2 physical servers, which act as, it's a virtualization host. So most of our servers that we have, for example, our Munis program, a file server, those are all virtual. So the cost for the hardware for those don't exist. It's just licensing for the operating system and for users to access them, and then the programs on them as well. As far as cloud goes, you pay per cycle and per use. So that's I can't give you an exact number because there's all different calculators for them depending on who you go and where you go for, but you have to know exactly how much you're going to use at a specific time because it's billed per minute, per hour, per usage. So it depends on how much you're using it. It is something that I've looked into and something I'll continue to look into. But another disadvantage to that is if we lose our internet connection, we don't have access to any of our servers. So that is a consideration to take. Luckily, our internet connection has been pretty stable, I would say, but it is something to consider, though. There are different services that we can move to the cloud, and that's actually one that I'm looking at currently, moving email to the cloud service. So it's not hosted in-house, and that will help save. I actually have some future CIP items upgrading our Exchange server, which would be negated if we move that to the cloud. So it is something that we're pursuing, just carefully.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mallory?
So for our data backups that aren't cloud-based, do
Yep.
we have those in like a fireproof, waterproof area?
No. We don't have, we currently don't have locations like that. We have 2 locations that the backups exist in. So if one of those sites gets damaged or whatever, we do have a secondary location. But that is something that I would definitely like to do.
Do you have an estimate of what that could cost? Is it built in anywhere?
I don't at the moment, no.
Just something to consider.
question.
I know we deal with it
Yeah.
where I work, and it's a big concern.
Yeah.
And when you get into cloud-based too, there's more to think about in terms of licensing
Yeah.
and data encryption and all of that, so there's another cost to that.
Yep, certainly.
Absolutely. Any other questions? I know one thing, that if Ed says no to you, you can basically turn his lights out. Probably lock him in his
Pulls the plug on
office,
me.
too, so, you know.
Just pulls the plug on me.
And as I remember, on a percentage basis, once again, you get the biggest budget increase of anybody. So there's something to be said for that, Ed. That's like job preservation, isn't it? All right. Anyways, the operating budget, amount requested, and town manager agrees, $211,037. That's a 12.75% increase over prior year. I know some of it is in your salary, a bigger piece is in hardware, software maintenance. I'm sure some of what you sort of touched on, the rest we probably bred up here anyways, as far as I'm concerned on that. So I guess the general question for me is, you've been in this role for a little while now. My guess is some of the standards that you're trying to implement, you're looking at other towns to see what they're doing, probably for best practices, and also in terms of are we investing to some degree appropriately or at least equally to towns of other sizes, that kind of thing.
certainly.
Are you comfortable with that? And I know it's a general question with the CFO sitting right next to you on that. You comfortable with that? I know we've been trying to increase investment in this area.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly trying not to push it too far, because I certainly could.
We understand that.
I was just at a meeting the other day with several other towns, and one of them, they're completely cloud-based. Everything they're pushing towards the cloud. But that kind of investment is a heavy hit, and I don't want to jump too far ahead. If we do it in stages, it's a little bit more manageable.
And the reason why I bring it up is I want folks watching at home, and certainly some of these directors here anyways, just to realize that there's a lot that you're doing here, and I know we're trying to increase that area, certainly of expertise and of control of what's going on around here. And be smart about it, too. I know, I appreciate it. I've never seen, nothing has been down in terms of me going online ever, and I haven't heard anything either. And no news to me is good news regarding the info services part here, so thank you on that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this, Trevor? No, good, okay.
I have one more question.
Yeah, sure, Mallory.
So I noticed your budget doesn't have an allowance for conferences, and many other departments do that. Is that something that you've either considered or you've seen conferences that would be useful for you?
Most of the conferences, believe it or not, are free.
Okay.
They're put on by vendors, so they invite you to come down and they pay for it. There are, like I said, I was just at like a meeting the other day. That's another free one that we're just part of. So I don't really need a budget for that at this point. If that does come up, I'll certainly include it, but right now, it should be good.
Great. All right, amount requested, $211,037. Is there a motion?
Motion to recommend?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, so voted. Thanks, Mike, good to
Thanks
see
very
you.
much. Good to see you.
Thanks for your time tonight. Okay. Our last budget for the evening is Department of Public Works. So how many budgets we got here, Bill? 7, 8, 10, 12?
Too many.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lose count.
There are several here. And what I'd like to do, because I know you've got a whole bunch of, I'll call it different businesses, and we've got some of the directors here. The total amount requested for DPW this year is $5,627,304. That's a 6.13% increase over prior year. So we'll get back to kind of big picture on that just a little bit. Can you real quick, before I even start throwing some numbers out here anyways, can we go, I'll call it division by division on this. Engineers first, anything new going on there, what we're trying to accomplish
Sure.
that may have changed?
Absolutely. First of all, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Finance
Good to see
Committee.
you, thanks for coming.
So with me tonight also, I have Joanna Paquin, civil engineer from DPW, here to answer any stormwater relevant questions. Jeff Mitchell, the assistant director, sewer superintendent, and Kenny Fairbanks, highway, parks, cemetery, superintendent and golf course manager. So glad that they're here, so they'll help me answer any questions that you may have. So first of all, in engineering, the biggest change in this budget, I would say, is probably we increased the roadway reconstruction line item by $10,000. And I think what we're trying to do is that, rather than staying flat line, recognizing that there's an increase in cost each year for asphalt and construction costs, that we're trying to kind of stay in pace with what those increases are, so that we don't fall behind. So that was, I think, the main increase, and I didn't bring my cheaters, but that's from what I can see for, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if I need them.
Yeah, that's,
But in engineering, that's the main increase, and if you want, I can jump into stormwater.
I just have one quick question on the road reconstruction. The 2018 amount, the 300,000?
I believe, I think that may have been a year that some of the...
That reflects expended. So there were projects ongoing, not invoiced yet. Work was performed as of June 30th. They were aggressively repaving the roads in the spring into the summer. We carried over that money and expended it in July or August when they were invoiced.
That's fine, just...
Yeah, this does not reflect, remember, this reflects expended, not what was appropriate.
No, that's fine, and to me, it was just, I know we haven't stopped, working on stuff, just more of a timing of the fiscal year.
I can tell you we spend every dime of reconstruction.
I think some may have also gone towards snow and ice deficit that year, if I remember right.
We may have, as 1 year, transferred out 25 or 50.
It may have been a small amount, because that was a big year for snow and ice, yeah. But we do spend every penny in roads. In fact, I can tell you, each year, each fiscal year, we look at where are we at. We typically will advertise for around 1.5 million total between Chapter 90 and town funds. And we are usually down to the last 100,000 to make sure we have enough money to cover all the invoices that come in. So we spend every penny into the roads to the point where I start getting a little nervous to make sure we have enough money. And we always do. We track it very closely, but we do spend every penny.
Good. And we would expect that, too. Are there any other questions, just as we're looking at the engineer division? Not much there otherwise, so, okay, that's fine. Is there going to be an expectation of maybe bumping road reconstruction 10 a year, something like that, without committing?
Well, I think Bill raised a good point. Just trying to stay level with inflation or increased costs so you don't diminish the level of commitment that people are accustomed to, the residents are accustomed to on an annual basis. So, like Bill said, we don't want to fall behind. He raised it as an item when he put together his budget. We fully agree that that level of commitment should be maintained and totally support the inflationary aspect of that increase.
Okay. Kevin?
I guess just briefly, because I know we're going to get into stormwater stuff momentarily, but when roads are redone, are the catch basins and all the drainage on those roads done at the same time?
Great point. And what I'll say is, before I answer that, I wanted to mention, too, that we typically do about 4 to 4.5 miles of roadways per year. We have a little over 90 miles of town road. So we're on track with a 20-year plan that we have to reconstruct or resurface all town roads. We're probably trending more towards 20 to 22 years. We're hoping that as the cost, if we get more to a mill and overlay program versus pulverizing, the cost should go down and get to that 20-year, but we're very close to that 20-year mark. I think we're at about 40% of the roads in town so far that have had treatment. But to answer your question, Kevin, the drainage, and that's why if we want to jump to stormwater, we do inspect the drainage. I can tell you that what we're finding is that a lot of the drainage infrastructure, the pipes, are deteriorating, and to a point where I think we're close to 40 to 50% needing replacement. And it is an item that I think that over time we need to address. And that's one of the reasons why I did propose an increase in that line item, and I'll get into that a little bit more. So currently what's happening is, as we look at the system, we clean out the catch basins, we inspect the basins, we replace the ones that are deteriorated with new structures or rebuild them. The pipes themselves can be difficult to inspect. Sometimes we'll camera the lines. If there's obvious visible deterioration and we know the pipe is rotted completely, sometimes it'll collapse during construction with the heavy equipment. So we're replacing, I would say, the pipes that are in the worst condition, that are going to fail potentially during construction, and a lot of times they do. But there are other pipes that ideally we should be replacing, because they're probably not going to last 10, 20 years. So in those areas, we'll go back and have to patch those areas and replace segments. But I can tell you that when that particular road has to be done in the future, in 10, 20 years, it'll certainly need to be replaced at that point, because it's in failure. Sometimes it may be a complete failure. So I think by increasing the pipes and catch basins line item, it would give us a plan that over time, we're replacing all our pipes too, because they are all going to need replacement. When we pull them out, Jeff has gone out and cameraed them with the sewer camera, and at first we thought, well, the pipe doesn't look as bad as we thought, and we'll get into it, and when we pull it out, some people may have seen, as we remove them, they're completely deteriorated and rotted right through. So the piping is definitely worse, and we're seeing it every year. A lot of the system is probably 40, 50 plus years old. And it's the corrugated metal pipe is all rotted out. The concrete pipe is in good shape, but there's not a lot of concrete. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I'm just curious, as we invest in those 90 miles of roadway while they're stripped down to nothing.
We are definitely doing more than most communities do. I can tell you that. We are replacing our drainage pipes. We'd like to do more, just planning 20 years down the road, because we don't want to leave this burden for somebody in the future. I think more can be done and should be done, but we do more than probably most communities do. We have a line item, and we've had it for several years now, to replace pipes and catch basins. We have a drainage line item. We use all of that towards a lot of drainage work, but there's certainly more that could be done looking at what's going to happen 20 years down the road.
Okay. Mallory?
Would there be any impact on sewer usage fees replacing these pipes? Or
No, this is separate from sewer. Yes.
Yeah, those fees will be coming up sometime soon, won't they, Jeff? They'll be discussed, won't they?
I mean, Mallory raises a point, and I don't know if maybe you've read that, there's stormwater utilities that some communities are moving towards, and that's a separate fee, similar to having a sewer department and water department. You have a stormwater utility as well. They have enterprise accounts where they are doing drainage work, which yes, drainage work, which I can jump into the stormwater with you unless you have.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're done with the engineering part. That was pretty straightforward. Kevin had a nice segue into the stormwater. The stormwater division, my requested is $361,547. I believe the math is exactly, $200,000 less than department request, and that $200,000 is a difference between the town manager and you regarding the replacing pipes and catch basins. So if you could fill us in on that minor difference of opinion on cost.
Absolutely. And there's probably I could talk for about an hour on this topic.
You're not going to.
But I would try.
No.
I won't do that.
No, not
I
gonna
brought
happen.
Joanna here. She could talk probably 6 hours on it. So.
That's fine. I'll get Mike Marino, and we'll take care of the microphone. You got 7 minutes. No, I'm kidding.
So I'll be quick. I'll try to. So stormwater is a major change that we're seeing, not just in our town, but all the communities in the area. The town of Auburn belongs to a stormwater coalition, which consists of 30 other towns in the area. The biggest change has been, and some of you may recall, back around 2008, 2009, we had looked at potentially creating a stormwater utility in expectation of the new, what we call the NPDES permit, National Pollution Discharge Elimination Systems permit through the EPA, that was going to be mandated that we would have to comply. We had a study done by a consultant. They came back with, you're looking at about $500,000 per year, and there were, over several years, there were some increases over that number. The utility was voted down, if I recall, I believe by the Board of Selectmen when it was presented. But at that time, the stormwater budget was created, and I think we, at that point, it's $300,000 per year.
Yeah.
So now, fast forward, the permit was a 2003 permit, had been continued and continued and continued. Well, effective July of 2017, July 1 of 2017, the new permit became ineffective. And I believe it was, they then delayed it 1 year after that, so then another delay, so 1 more year. And this permit is called, it's the general permit for the stormwater discharges from small municipal separate stormwater, storm sewer systems in Massachusetts. They refer to it as MS4 permit. So this is our permit for the town of Auburn to be able to discharge stormwater into the water bodies of the United States. So every community that is an MS4 community, which is not all communities, so when you get further out into the rural areas and the Brookfields and where, especially the Brookfields, they're not. More of your urbanized areas are. So this is our permit that allows us to now discharge water into United States water bodies. So then, and I'm going to try to be brief, but it's pretty complex. And then in September, Joanna prepared the notice of intent for the town of Auburn to be submitted to EPA to make sure that we are in compliance with this permit, which required us to do this. And in that, there are many items that we are committed to, which they are requiring us to commit to, that we have to do going forward. And a lot of these things, all of us, meaning the communities, town of Auburn, surrounding communities, are trying to understand completely what it is we have to do and what we're committing to over the next 10 years. The permit, I believe, is a 4-year permit, but in this 4-year permit, they're identifying things that you have to do over the next 10 years. So what they're looking at is they've identified impaired water bodies. So you look at Leesville Pond, Pondville Pond, and actually even Long Island Sound, which is impaired, that eventually our water discharges to. So we have to identify, based on all of these impairments, and some of them might be impaired with phosphorus, some with nitrogen, we then have to look at how are we going to improve this situation. And as a result of that, there are other things that we have to now start doing. So we have to start sampling all of our drainage system, all of the outfalls. So every pipe that discharges off the road, we need to have a sample. Next year we have to start dry weather sampling. Following year, we have to do wet weather sampling. So you have to go out there, I believe either in the rain or immediately after the rain event, and take a sample. We have to look for illicit discharge or detection and elimination, another requirement. So we have to look, if we find that there's suds or things coming out of a drainage line and it's dry, well, where's this water coming from? And then we have a certain amount of time that we have to now trace this back, detect it, and then correct it or eliminate it. We have to come up with new regulations for construction projects that disturb more than 1 acre. And then there's also going to be a impervious area segment. It's going to affect residential properties as well. There's going to be a threshold. So we have to start reviewing all these plans that come in. We have to start doing construction inspections. We have to have operation and maintenance plans on these projects. It goes on and on. We have to identify our own town properties and look to either decrease impervious areas, provide what's called BMPs, best management practices for stormwater, to try to improve the quality of your stormwater. And I think in the first 3 years, we have to find one location, one town building. I think we're probably going to choose Highway because we have a project that we're going to do with the lots. So, and this goes on and on. Like I said, Joanna could probably talk to you for hours, and we would all fall asleep because it is not very exciting, but unfortunately it is very complex, and it's a lot that we have to do over the next few years. So because of that, we looked at how are we going to comply with this permit, and we felt there's no way that myself and Joanna are going to be able to do this by ourselves. We can look to hire outside consultants. I can tell you that that cost would be very significant to do that, probably in the hundreds of thousands per year, I would say, in an adjacent community, probably 2 towns over. They did create a stormwater utility, and they are raising $1.9 million per year for compliance for this permit. So it's going to be a significant cost. I think a lot of this, as it's kind of rolling out to all the communities, and we work together with the coalition, with the 30 towns, we're trying to wrap our hands around, or our heads around, what exactly are we going to have to do going forward. So we're trying to look at this, identify what do we have to do, and it's not something you can wait last 6 months. Some of these things have to be done years ahead. So as we go forward, we feel as though at this point, this is what we need. We know for sure we need this. So it's an additional engineering position to help us get this work done, okay? So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have. There's a lot to this. We're still learning a lot about it as we go, and I know Joanna goes to the coalition meetings. She's a very active member. And there's a lot that we're trying to figure out as we go. So.
The replace pipes, catch basins, that kind of thing. And I've kind of had this question, concern before, and it's more of a, once again, a pocket shift thing. Is this something that could be thrown on the CIP and dealt with that way? Just from a capital
Listen,
perspective?
I don't know how your budget, what it looks like, but we highlighted this in yellow to show that we want to emphasize the need for this. Unfortunately, given the constraints at 2.5, we did provide for a new engineer, and we, both Julie and I, committed to making this a priority going forward to try to establish a budget adequate for the things that Bill mentioned. Not only, it's not a one-time thing, it's an annual thing. At the same time, we are going to look at, and I don't know if we're going to go this route, but it's something that I think we need to discuss, is whether or not we want to set up our own utility, and whether or not we want to raise a fee through that utility in order to support these costs that are mandated by the federal government. So I can tell you, whether it's the fall, whether it's the annual town meeting, if funds do become available, this is the first area we're going to look at to beef up the budget in order to meet what's coming down the pike. It's here already. Certainly, Bill indicated through the use of the engineer, that individual can identify where the need is, where that money has to be directed. That's going to take some time to do. So we can buy a little time, but I'm telling you now, this is one area that we're going to have to address and beef up the budget.
Okay. And I think I sort of misspoke on this. There is a new position added to this division.
Yes.
I was just identifying where your department request was different from the town manager, obviously relating to our constraints with 2.5. I'll open it up to any other questions on this at this point in time. Mallory?
So, forgive me because I'm not a civil engineer, but stormwater runoff from like the Pike and 290, that all ends up in Auburn at some point, correct?
They have their own drainage system, and they have their own EPA permits that they have to comply with as well. And they've been working, I think, obviously I can't speak for them, but I've seen their construction projects ongoing for the past couple of years. They know this was happening too, was coming, and have been working on some major drainage improvement projects on the interstate system. But they have to handle their own drainage, so it is separate from the town drainage. It'd be nice if they tied in and we can go have them help pay for it, but.
Well, yeah. See, my train of thought.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions in this, Kevin? Yeah.
Just so quickly, there's no other funding mechanisms out there. It's a federal mandate to manage rainwater, something that was going to come whether we were on this earth or not.
The only thing that we could probably use would be Chapter 90 funds for the drainage work, but then it's that much less work going into your paving. So it's, yeah, there's no other. We originally did receive a grant with the Stormwater Coalition, and I don't remember the exact number. I don't know if Jeff or Joanna remember. I would guess, was it 150,000 maybe? 200. So originally, there was a grant to create this coalition, because I think the state of Massachusetts, the governor and lieutenant governor felt that if the towns work together and come up with a solution, it's going to be more cost-effective than each town working separately. So they wanted to encourage the coalition, and it did work. But what's happened over the past couple of years, as other towns see this coming, they may have started with originally maybe 10 or 12 towns that were part of the coalition, has now grown to 30. The grant number has decreased each year. And I believe it's at a point now where I think the coalition is probably self-sufficient or self-funding, and I believe they probably have over 100,000 in reserves, because they also have hired an engineer, Fuss & O'Neill, to help us come up with some of these regulations, come up with the educational aspects of this. And I meant to bring the Think Blue campaign that they've started too. They have huge billboards. It's called Think Blue, and it's actually, I think, a rubber ducky that you'll see. But it's a big campaign that they're pushing. So that grant was available several years ago. But at this point, I don't think, if there's any money in that grant, it's very little. I think the towns, we pay, I think, $4,000 or $5,000 per year now to be part of this coalition, and it's so that we all pool our money together to hire one consultant to try to look at what's needed for developing our permits as we go.
Okay.
I'm sorry, so that position will be primarily responsible for stormwater issues, and is civil engineer 2 a higher position than the civil engineer? I just see they both have the same account numbers, I just didn't know.
Yeah, no, the 2 position would be a lower position.
2 would be lower, okay.
Yeah, I actually thought about it after the fact, whether or not, it's, which one should be the 2, which should be the 1, but it's, yeah, the 2 is the lower position. Yeah. But I'm sorry, and yes, it would primarily be stormwater. If that person had any time available, I could certainly use another engineer with construction inspections on a lot of our roadway projects. That's something that, before we even looked at this, we knew, Joanna and I had talked about it, that we would like to be on site more often, but we just don't have that luxury. So if there was any time available, we would have that person out on the construction sites while we're doing our roadway projects. So Joanna and I, currently what we do is we go out on site, we'll stay for a half an hour and then go back to the office, and we just do, inspections that aren't scheduled. But it'd be nice to have somebody there more often. But
I know you've mentioned, though, you've had some very good results and confidence in the companies that you've hired to be laying down the road, so.
Well, we've had great contractors, so we've been fortunate that we haven't had to stay on site 8 hours a day, because even when we do our spot inspections, they're always doing things the way they should be. But it would be nice to have someone there a little bit more frequently, but it's kind of a luxury. But if there was any time, that's probably where I would utilize them.
Mallory, did you have another question?
Yeah, so there's an increase in the line item for public education from $1,000 to $2,500. I just wanted to know, obviously, people are going to have a lot of questions, so
Yeah.
kind of what you have planned for that increase?
That is, so we may have mailings go out. We may have advertisements go out into local newspapers. So part of the permit is there's a public education aspect to this now. So we have to also show that we are also trying to educate the public on what things they should not be doing. Minimizing fertilizer usage, certainly not putting it down before a rain event. So there are different things for education aspects, even washing vehicles. There are certain soaps that you can use for washing your vehicle that are environmentally friendly, and trying to encourage all these things to improve water quality.
And to follow on that question, you had mentioned earlier that you'll have like dry and wet inspections, and if you discover something that doesn't seem right, is there potential to create fees if
But that's part of
there are policies that aren't being followed?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, that's a great point. The part of our stormwater regulations that we still have to adopt, and that'll be a public process. There will be fees associated with plans being submitted, fines for people not complying. So all of that's going to have to be looked at, and all these things have to happen fairly quickly too. So yes.
Bottom line is you won't be able to fertilize your lawn anymore.
What's that little room? Really covered darkness. That's what headlamps are for.
Hey, Bill, with the 200,000, I'll say you asked for that the town is not giving you right now, would there also be a component of that that would be additional hours for highway workers in terms of putting this stuff in, or is that part of what would be contracted with road replacement and a combination of that?
For the drainage work, certainly there would be a savings the more drainage work that we can do in-house, and we try to do as much as we can with our staff. For the cost of the pipe and the material, you might pay, $10 per linear foot, where with a contractor, you're going to pay, say $60 to $75 per linear foot. But I don't see a huge increase of us doing more than what we're already doing, just because we don't have the staff to do it. So
That's where I was going with that. So the 200 grand you were originally requesting, that's great if that's all piping and hundreds of feet of piping, but if you don't have enough hands to put it in.
At this point, the bulk of that would be by the private contract.
Okay.
So during the roadway reconstruction project, we would identify what pipe we want replaced and what catch basins we replaced, and have them do that work at that time. It may not be the most cost-effective. It would probably be more cost-effective doing a lot of it in-house, but it's also then trying to coordinate our crews doing the work with them doing their work. Sometimes that can get a little complicated, too.
Right, absolutely. Okay. Any other questions on the stormwater division? Obviously, there'll be more to follow on that. Okay, let's go to the highway division. This will be Kenny's Empire here. Total amount requested on this, I'll go kind of right to the bottom line on that. I want to make sure I have it. Total highway is $1,365,705. That's a 1.81% increase over last year. Just if there are any highlights on that, Bill?
Yes, sure. The highlight on this, on the highway budget, would be the clerical section. For a few years now, we've had two administrators, one that works primarily in the sewer department and one in the highway department. Highway also handles any of the purchase orders, bill schedules, phone calls. Highway, engineering, and facilities, and sewer department, she will answer mainly fleet maintenance. Parks go through her as well, but sometimes through Pat Messina. So since we've added the fleet maintenance and facilities division, their workload has increased. They've been able to handle the increase. They've also have let us know they are under a lot of stress to get the work done, and we recognize that. But they've been able to do the work. And in the past couple of years, the sewer department has gone from annual billing to biannual billing, and I think that's one of a very time-consuming and complex project for one person. And now with the addition of the additional stormwater work, we're looking to add a part-time clerical person to try to take some relief off these two people. And so that would be 19 hours per week, to be split between highway and sewer. So what you'll see, my request was $67,551, and that was 1.5 positions. And then in talking with the town manager and with Ed and with Jeff, we decided that we would split this position and take half of it out of sewer, the sewer enterprise, and half out of highway. So I think it's somewhere in the effect of about maybe $9,000 per department for this person. So that's probably the main item. Other than that, I can say that the DEP fines and penalties last year was $980. That has now been eliminated because we have finally closed out that site, which has been ongoing for probably 20+ years. So that's been closed out through DEP, so there'll no longer be any other fines.
Assessments.
Tree removal, we've increased that. I can tell you, we get a lot of calls on trees. And if we have a hazardous tree that we have to take down, and we don't have the funds to do it through this account, I'll use my highway or roadway account to do it, because we can't leave a hazardous tree. So we're finding that we do spend a lot more on trees than what we're budgeting.
We haven't heard any stories this winter like we did last year, with multiple trees falling, cars, people. That's your-
Yeah, the only one we had this year was the windstorm a couple weeks ago. I think we had maybe a half a dozen trees come down.
Talking fatalities.
Yeah, so we were
Let that
fortunate.
happen in another town.
But we've taken a lot of trees down that are dead, so we've been fortunate that way.
Guys been doing good at that. No, that's good. Regarding, I guess, sort of cutting back to what's going on right now, not part of next year's budget, where we stand in terms of snow and ice, I have to ask.
Yeah, sure, snow and ice, and I think we just sent a letter up indicating we're in a deficit on two accounts, the highway wages and part-time wages. And part-time wages are basically our parks, cemetery, and sewer employees, so it's all of the DPW staff. So anytime we initially have a snow event, we call in our highway division to salt the roads. We don't have the whole crew in yet. We utilize the part-time wages, park, cemetery, and sewer when we go into a plowing operation, and we probably have 24 total town employees out plowing, and now we're down to probably 10 private contractors. In years back, I think it was probably closer to 20 private and 15 or so highway employees. So we're doing the vast majority of the work in-house plowing, which is why our two accounts are in a deficit. And then the private contractors, they are still in the black. We still have money available on their account. Salt itself, I'm right at about what we've budgeted right now in salt, and you probably have somewhere around 400 tons left in the shed. So now I'm going week to week on the salt, and every year I always wish I can finish the year with full shed, but it never seems to happen. So we're going week to week on salt. I'm hoping that we don't go into a deficit in salt. And I don't know if you have the numbers we sent up, it was probably somewhere around 20,000, those two accounts, ballpark. Then we just went, we had the last two storms, which were both on the weekends. I think it was another 14,000. So we're probably somewhere in a ballpark of 35,000 on those two accounts. But we're in the black on other accounts, so.
So not
bad.
bad.
And I
Hate
did
to say that mid-March.
look at the amount of times we went out. I had it in another book, but I can tell you we've had just 44. The last storm was just 0.8 inches, about 45 inches of snow. Average winter is about 60 inches, so snowfall will definitely below average, but it's still a fair amount of snow. And it's the ice, sleet, and freezing rain events that have really kind of hit us hard. And there were two in particular that we've had, that we were here 12 hours straight, and when you have sleet and freezing rain, you have to treat those roads, and that's when they get costly with material. So overall, we're not in bad shape, but
Thanks for the update on that. Any questions, Kim?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the salt and calcium account. It looks like we're significantly lower than the three-year average and what we spent last year. Is that another area we need to look at addressing, Eddie?
for the three-year average is what, 300,000. I can tell you the 2 years prior, there were real severe storms, and I know we went to town meeting and increased that, I think, by, was it 50,000 last year? So we're trying to get...
Total snow and ice by 50, 25 of which went to salt and calcium. So as you were discussing, and Bill was giving you an update on snow and ice, let me just tell you that when you shake it all out, Bill was right, the total wage account, all wages, is about $25,000 in a deficit balance. But when you look at all the other line items, storm tree removal, equipment rental, storm meals, sand and gravel, salt and calcium, and plow blades, between encumbered and remaining balance is about $50,000. So right now we're about $25,000 to the plus, provided there are no outstanding invoices on private plowers that may have assisted us in previous storms. That being said, that 50 we added for the current year went a long way. We'd be looking at raising a portion of that now. So we want to continue to add to that when we can. So we're taking out those years where we are seeing a large expense in salt and calcium. I can tell you with the work that Jeff's been doing, we submitted a FEMA reimbursement for the... What storm was that, Jeff?
March 13th, storm of last year.
March 13th. We're getting about $70-some-odd thousand dollars from FEMA. What's that?
Yes, it was almost 2 feet, like 22 inches.
So what we'd like to do with that, and maybe we bring it at a fall town meeting, is we reserve that money, because I don't know when we're going to get it in. We're just finishing out the filing of that, and they changed the process of doing that. And we had discussions with Bill. We'd like to load up the salt shed, so we're going into the year with a full 100% full shed, so it doesn't put pressure on...
That would take care of it.
Yeah. In the meantime, if we can ratchet that up over the course of the next couple of fiscal years, 25, we take that volatility out of the mix.
And the other thing, too, that was also beneficial to us is this year, the numbers for the salt, we were at $10 per ton less than the previous year, Kim. So I see what you're saying. The 3-year average is still, $44,000 more than what we're currently budgeting. We're hoping that the 2 previous years kind of kick that average up, and if we could look beyond, in the further back in the past, some of the numbers were lower. So if we looked at a 5-year average, even though the costs can change, I'm hoping that the number we're at now, we're not too far from where we need to be. But I appreciate your point, and maybe we will have to increase that. Time will tell. We've had 2 brutal winters. This year, not so bad.
Straightforward.
I don't know why the winter's not over.
And plus, part of our reserve account is an expectation that we're going to have something here, even though that's not great budgeting. That's what we've done, but it allows us flexibility. So we've got some of it covered anyways in the reserve bucket. Any other questions on highway? Kevin?
Just a quick one. I know we always spend a good amount of money on getting the crosswalks painted every year. I love to see the guys out there. Our crosswalks are phenomenal in town. But I've noticed a lot of other communities, the city of Worcester, some of the surrounding towns are starting to, kind of seems like a big push for the solar flashing crosswalks, speed signs in the school zones. The ones that we have in our school zones, I think, were there prior to me going to grammar school. Some of them aren't functioning any longer. Is there grant money out there for some of this stuff? Is that why I'm seeing so much of it all of a sudden? Or is it just the technology is evolved to the point where they don't have to run wires any longer? They put the pole and go?
I think it's the latter. I think it's the technology. In fact, myself, Joanna, and Jeff just had a meeting a couple weeks ago with a company. We're looking at a crosswalk in town over by the high school, which is part of our major reconstruction project for Auburn Street. We will replace that with a rapid flashing beacon, I think they call it. But that's a couple years out still before it gets constructed. So we're looking at purchasing one that we will be able to relocate. And I think the price was around just under $10,000 for that system. And it's solar, similar to the stop sign that we put at the Orchard Street North intersection with Auburn Street. I mean, it works very well. So I think, like you said, it's the technology. And in the past, a lot of the solar infrastructure that was out there was not as effective as it is now. So we're looking at purchasing a unit in the spring when the weather breaks, and we'll be able to install it. And then once we do the Auburn Street reconstruction project, we would relocate that to another crosswalk, and then potentially use those more often in some of the very heavily utilized crosswalks. They are expensive, so you're going to want to be careful
Judicious.
where you select them to use them. Yeah.
I mean, that Auburn Street one is the high school is, I mean, I watch kids step out and there's 2 crosswalks staggered on either side of the entrance, going across, the road's wide, so there's people slowing to let them go while traffic's going around them, and it's just...
Yeah, we're looking to purchase that in probably in a few weeks, and then when springtime gets here and the roads are thawed, we'll be able to go in there and install them. So that's a great question, because we've noticed that too, that the technology has really improved, and
Just seen so many of them going up as of late. I didn't know if there was some sort of, Governor's Highway Safety Grant that these communities were tapping into to...
not that I'm aware of. There's always funding similar to the Transportation Improvement Program that we're going through with Auburn Street. I mean, that's a $3 million project, which we're hoping to move up schedule by a year. So, I mean, those are the kind of funds that we're pursuing, but any of the other smaller items, I'm not aware of any. They're probably utilizing their own funds for those.
Good question. Moving on to the, I guess we'll call it the facilities, total facilities management. That's about requested $79,900. That's basically in line with department request, smaller budget there. Any questions on that? Fleet maintenance, $195,580. I'll say nearly flat funded. Motor vehicle repairs is up a little bit on that. Is that just, we've got some more wheels running around
I think a
town?
lot of it's probably cost of parts, Jeff.
Parts increase in vehicles.
Yeah, okay.
And as I stated, we're doing a lot more plowing with our own staff, so there's more breakdowns that we have to repair internally.
Okay. That's fine. Kev?
Any idea how many vehicles we're servicing and how many?
It's over 100.
It's over 100. And you're doing your own trucks, or you're sending the trucks out, the heavy stuff you're sending?
We're doing, I would say 95% of the work in-house. Fire trucks, DPW truck.
And this has been brought in-house in the last how many years that we've, at least the
5-6 years now?
cruisers less than that, right? Is that, cruisers?
5?
At least 5.
Yeah, at least, 5-6 years.
Right after we became DPW.
2012, yeah. Yeah, no, 6 years.
6 years? And about 95% of the work is being done in-house, just so, I know you project, Jeff, but I'm just trying to help out for the folks at home, that's all.
DPW, police, and fire, and town hall vehicles too now.
Right.
In overall savings, this is a, has been
I
a
think
savings
we
as opposed to
projected
much.
somewhere around 70,000 per year.
Yeah.
And the quality of the work is preventive maintenance has helped cut back on
Right.
Other repairs.
other repairs
And extended the useful life of the equipment.
Less surprises. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Good, all right. The Parks Division, my requested $231,168. Pretty much in line with usual. I didn't have any notes on this. Any questions on that? Okay. Packagug Golf Course, which is an enterprise fund, just a reminder on that. Budget requested $349,210. That's about $10,000, a little bit more than that than last year's budget. Any comments on that, Bill, just briefly?
Sure, I can tell you, last year, even with the very wet fall that we had, we didn't get a lot of golfers out there probably towards the latter part of October and November, and we still finished the year with just over $400,000 in revenue, which we're very happy to see considering the fall was such a wet time of year this past year. I can tell you that the current budget, we still are carrying the 10,000 contingency in the current fiscal year. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow. We're meeting with the golf course, the advisory committee, myself and Ken and others, and Kristen. So what we are finding is that the merchandise and food concession line items are low. In fact, this year we'll probably have to take from the contingency account going forward in the spring. It's a good thing because we make money off of both of those line items. So we are definitely selling more food and more merchandise than we were planning. So we've increased that this next fiscal year. We may have to keep increasing that, which again, that's a good thing.
Yep.
Banking charges, I know that's increased. I'm trying to find banking, yeah, $7,500. That's also increased. Again, not necessarily a bad thing. Not everybody pays cash, so if we swipe their card, we have to pay a fee. So because of the amount of golfers that we have, I believe we sell around 20,000 rounds of golf per year. So that's a lot of golf and a lot of debit cards. So that cost has increased as well.
Okay, good. Recreation, unless there's any questions on that. Recreation, budget of $52,996, just a slight increase over last year. There's a layout on how salaries are based on that. That's a conglomeration of accounts. Any questions on that? Okay. Cemetery, division budget, $185,541. That's a 2.75% increase over prior year. Any questions on that? I didn't have any. Okay. Sewer total, $2,118,188. And that's I want to call that $27,000, $28,000 increase over prior year. Any questions on that? The upper Blackstone, that was a 15% increase, Jeff? In that's a real number? That's not an estimate, that's already been decided on what that's going to be? Yeah, okay. And electricity is up 20 grand. I believe you had come in at least once for a shortfall with electricity already?
It's not the budget.
Yeah, okay. It has to do with, well, rainfall, right? And raining like hell a lot, so. All right, Kevin?
While you bring up electricity for the sewer department is to run the pumping stations, is that?
Yes.
And is that, it seems like it's always a big number. I mean, the few years I've been here, the electricity is, are there any other means in terms of, I don't know, propane or others that are less costly to manage some of these pumping stations?
The only other thing that we could possibly, what it is called peak demands, and every time the pumps run, it seems to be within a peak demand point of time, and once the peak demand is initiated, that rate carries throughout the entire month, unfortunately. So that's where the big pump stations cost us, we're looking at $2,500, anywhere from $2,500 to $4,000 a month in electricity on the bigger pump stations. We've looked at running the generators. There's an offset program through National Grid. If you run the generators, the problem is the generators are so old that we have to meet emission standards through the EPA. We need to buy new generators in order, spend a lot to save some, so as far as alternative power sources, there really isn't anything out there as far as fixed type of pump. Portable pumps are one thing, but okay. We're running, we plan the cycles, trying to keep the pumps running, as long as possible, the longest cycles, but obviously we're limited by the amount of flow. The longer the cycles, the less starts and stops, the more economical that they do run. But we're right about peak.
Is everybody else around us in the bigger places, are they running electric pumps on?
Jeff, what's your best advice? Flush later in the evening? Is that off-peak?
Flush less.
Huh?
Mellow, let it mellow,
I believe the microphones were briefly turned down for that.
I hope. A lot of conservation is done.
That's what it is. All right. Any other Kim, please.
Retained earnings?
So that's a plan that we set in motion several years ago to build up a retained earnings to meet the infrastructure needs. So that money gets closed out to retained earnings in an effort to build it up. So there is a portion of the fee that addresses the town-wide infrastructure. So it's basically surplus appropriation that gets closed out every year. Now, if it's, and there are situations that we had a sewer main break, so to limit the amount that we had to raise as a revenue deficit, we utilized that retained earnings last year as a way to minimize the impact on that.
We had the Upland Street break, which was 240,000,
240,000, I think.
And then probably, right, yeah. And in Packagug Hill, several years ago, we had a major break over there, and that was even more costly. So we're trying to build back the retained earnings.
Too much flushing Christmas Eve. Okay. Well, let's move on, I guess, on that. Now, we still haven't looked at the CIP yet for DPW yet, so we still need to look at that. But the operating budget total for DPW, once again, $5,627,304 is 6.13% increase over prior year.
Motion to recommend?
Second.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, so voted. Thank you. All right, let's go back to that CIP, and then we'll get Bill out of here and finish up.
Some more payments, stuff that's been previously approved.
Let's see, in terms of current year changes, I'm just going to go real quick on this. For fleet maintenance, a service truck replacement became part of the revised budget, so
Right, I think that was, now Jeff can add to it, but I believe it's just a condition of the service vehicle that we're currently using.
Yeah, it's been recycled. This is the third time it's been reutilized, I should say. It started at the sewer department for 10 years. It went to highway for probably 5. Now it's lasted through fleet, I think 3, but
okay.
she started.
All right. And I only bring that up because it was not in the original 2020 CIP was added, so, all right, so we bled that one dry, I guess. Jetvac truck. So will we now have we have two Jetvac trucks?
We have one currently, when we purchase a new one, which, is it next year? 21, 2 years out, then we'll have 2.
Then we'll have 2, okay.
And we're going to probably use the backup one for cleaning catch basins, because a little more abuse to the vehicle doing that type of work.
It is, okay. All right. I guess the only other thing I had was 10,000 for the Lemansky bleachers was not in the original CIP.
This was something that the parks foreman came to me and Kenny about. His concern was that the condition of the bleachers, 3 in particular, were getting to a point that he felt that they weren't really safe, or getting to, that they wouldn't be safe going forward. So it wasn't something that was on our radar, but we did feel as though it's something that we wanted to address. So we need 15,000, we're gonna take 5,000 out of the recreation revolving account, and we're looking for an additional 10,000.
Okay. All right. The only other thing of note to me is, and more of a reminder, the sewer line repair under the sewer division, we bumped that up from $150,000 a year, and I believe that comes from retained earnings, to $200,000 a year, and starting in fiscal year 2022. So not really new, but just back to Kim's point regarding retained earnings and what it's used for. So have the lines been all assessed? I know there was, couldn't have been able to do them that quickly, right?
That's part of what this money is.
Yeah.
The assessment will happen within the next couple of years, hopefully.
Okay.
And then that'll be repaired, or whatever the findings are.
Okay, that's fine. All right, that's all I had for questions. Any other questions on the CIP? Kevin?
Just this large yellow highlight, we have the DPW roof. It's just, is that a placeholder for
I think at the time when we were developing the CIP, we were in the process of getting estimates for that project. And since CIP was developed, we've done some maintenance repairs in-house for our facilities division, but we recognize it's not going to last forever. And I believe the number that I have was about 500,000. So it's something I'll work with Eddie on, when we should get this programmed, what target year, and when funds will be available. It's something that, it's limping along, we patch it as we can, and again, facilities guys are doing a great job patching it, but just saying the roof is shot. And I first was thinking it was more like 300,000, but the estimate that I was 500. So, big.
So we want to put that on the radar screen, certainly, that's something that we have to address. And when such time that estimate is provided, and how we're going to fund it. Now, we may decide, all depending on how much life it has left, maybe it's a consideration that we appropriate a portion of free cash or stabilization to meet that. I just don't know, or we just don't know how much life it has left in it.
The temporary repair was done probably 2-3 years ago. It would start leaking again, we'd repair it again. It's the main section of the garage. The lower section had been repaired probably 10 years ago, although that was probably less costly repair than what should have been done. I think that was around $20,000. Again, it wasn't a Band-Aid, but it wasn't really probably the way it should have been done. So the complete replacement, we're looking at 500. So we'll know probably in the next year how that roof is holding up, but it's something that we have to keep on the radar. Certainly 5 years out, we need to program it.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to last that long.
Just to follow up on that one point, so right now we have studies out there for the police and the fire department for structures. Are there any other studies out there? I mean, just, there's nothing else, just those two things. It seems like a lot of money for that very aging facility down there. At what point do we?
I can say that in the master plan, one of my comments as they're developing the master plan was that we should probably be looking in the next few years at all of our buildings and maybe studying them, what improvements need to be done long-term, and looking at the library, DPW, town hall, and looking 10, 20 years down the road. So it's something that I think hopefully will be on the radar, because definitely going to be improvements needed down the road.
But if this is within 5 years, then that time it just isn't going to work out. And maybe we identify a lump of cash like we're able to do for the turf field replacement, and we seem to have a good chunk of that covered, and
Well, certainly that's something.
That kind of approach.
We're going to address this probably in the fall, the next round, either through an amendment or all depending on what condition it's in now. Certainly, we can finance that over a period of years. We have done that with other projects. We can throw a piece of free cash at it. We can throw a piece of stabilization, like we did with the high school replacement turf, like we've done for the fire truck, like we've done for a number of things. Those options are alive and well, and we expect to hopefully increase our free cash position as well as our stabilization in future years. So that's something that we will discuss and we will program in, but we don't have a handle on what that total cost is going to be at this point in time.
we have an idea of when you're going to take a good look at it?
Well, the one contractor who gave me an estimate was 500,000, so we can look to get additional cost estimates. But I think that's probably a good ballpark. I don't think you're going to get it done significantly less, certainly not 300. If someone give me a number, and that was off the state bid prices. So that.
Can we sell advertising, because it's right by the pike? We can put a
billboard right on the
up
roof.
there?
Good idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. All right, any other comments on the CIP? Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Ms. Paquin, good to see you. You never come up here, by the way. You know, you're too smart.
She was ready for the stormwater questions.
We'll get there, I'm sure. Thanks for your time, all of you. Okay, that's all our budgets for tonight.
Did we vote yet on that? I forget.
We don't have to vote on the CIP.
Oh, the other boards,
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. We'll do an overall vote on the CIP at some future time. Yeah. Ed, regarding do we need to take a revote on what we talked about last week with the CIP changes, or is that all set?
With the CIP changes?
Yeah, that we discussed last week, didn't we vote on those?
We didn't vote on any CIP.
Oh, the debt.
Yeah, the debt.
I'd actually like to hold that for a week. The Board of Selectmen did vote to approve what came out of the Finance Committee. But we were asked to, and we had this discussion, amending the CIP budget component of the financial policies to reflect what is in the debt management policy. But also, there was another change recommended by Selectman Carpenter on the funding sources. He wanted it to mirror what was in the debt management policy and the capital policy as well. So that's something that I will bring in at the next meeting, because I want you to see it in print form. So the debt management policy
Okay.
is on the books, it has been approved, but I just need to have you vote the amended capital budget policy.
All right, is that something you can send out to us? So we can
Sure,
read
I'll
it
send,
for-
yes.
Just to make that, I can't believe it's a big thing.
And I'll highlight those areas that changed in the policy.
Okay, well, that's fine. Great, thanks. We don't have any minutes. Any other comments before we close up for the night? Okay, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, so voted. Thank you, good night.